Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got 4 real horror stories you don't want to miss. So grab your headphones, relax, and let's dive into the darkness together. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy true scary stories. I've never really believed in supernatural things. I grew up with a logical mind, an engineer who trusts data, science, and evidence. But what happened to me 3 years ago in the Carpathian Mountains changed all of that. And if anyone ever tells you that mountains are peaceful or majestic, believe me, they can also be hungry. This is my story, and to this day, I still can't explain what I saw or what I heard. It was supposed to be a simple 3-day hiking trip. Just me, my best friend Eric, and 2 others. A photographer named Lena and her boyfriend, Tom. We had planned to explore an unmarked trail somewhere in the lower region of the Carpathians, a range famous for its fog, wolves, and old legends. Eric found an old map online that marked a cave, Grotta de Sange, or the Cave of Blood. Locals said it wasn't on any modern GPS maps. We laughed about it. The name sounded like something out of a horror film. But we were after photos and adventure, not myths. The first day went smooth. The forest was quiet, the air crisp, and the trail barely visible under layers of fallen leaves. By dusk, we set up camp on a rocky plateau. That night, the temperature dropped suddenly, from a mild 12 degrees Celsius to below freezing. When I woke up to pee at around 3 a.m., I noticed something odd. Our campfire had gone out. Not burned down. Out. Like someone had poured water on it. I thought it was the wind until I saw footprints. Bare footprints. Small. Human. Leading away from our tents toward the dark tree line. In the morning, I showed Eric what I saw. He frowned and said, "Maybe it's yours. You probably walked around in your sleep, but the prints were smaller than mine, like a child's, and there was no frost melt around them, even though the ground was frozen." Lena didn't want to go further, but Tom convinced her. "We're already here," he said. "Let's just reach the cave, get the photos, and head back." We packed our gear and continued up the mountain. That's when the forest started changing. The trees became silent. No birds. No wind. No sound except our boots crunching frost. Around noon, we stumbled across something that wasn't on the map. A wooden cross, old and decaying, nailed into a tree. There were symbols carved into the bark, like spirals and jagged lines. Lena took a photo, and immediately her camera froze. Screen black. Unresponsive. She cursed, pulled the battery out, then froze herself. She said, "Guys, look at this." The battery was hot. Burning hot. She dropped it, and when it hit the ground, it hissed like something alive. We should have turned back right there. But Eric kept going. We reached the cave just before sunset. The entrance yawned open beneath a cliff, a jagged hole dripping with dark moisture. The inside was pitch black and smelled like metal, like rust, or blood. Tom lit his headlamp and whistled. "Looks like the name fits." Inside, the air was heavy and thick. Every sound we made echoed back, but not quite the same. If I said, "Hello," the echo returned as a whisper, slower and lower in pitch. "Hello" turned into, "Hell no." Lena laughed nervously. Creepy acoustics. But it didn't feel like acoustics. It felt like the cave was speaking back. About 50 meters in, we found something that made my stomach twist. A pile of bones. Animal at first glance. Small, broken, scattered like something had fed there. but mixed in were fragments that weren't animal. A human jawbone, teeth still in place, and near it, a rusted metal tag, too faded to read. That's when we heard it. A sound from deeper inside. Not a growl, not an echo, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across stone. Eric raised his flashlight. "Probably an animal," he said, but his voice trembled. We stood still for maybe 30 seconds. All lights pointed ahead. The dragging sound stopped. Then came a deep, wet breath. Long, slow, like something inhaling through water. We couldn't see it, but we could feel it. The air moved with every breath, the kind of pressure that makes your eardrums throb. Tom whispered, "Let's go." We started backing up, carefully, quietly. Then, from the darkness, we heard it again, but closer. Another breath. And then, a whisper. At first I thought it was Eric, but the voice came from behind me. It said something that still wakes me up at night. "You shouldn't have come." I spun around. No one was there, just darkness. I ran. All of us did. We didn't stop until daylight hit our faces. When we emerged, something felt off. The sky was gray, darker than it should have been for late afternoon. We started back the way we came, but within 10 minutes, we realized something impossible. The path had changed. Landmarks were gone. The trees looked different. No compass reading matched. Eric swore we were heading north, but my GPS showed we were walking in circles. We argued. We panicked. And that's when Lena screamed. She was pointing at something hanging from a tree. At first, I thought it was an animal. But when I got closer, I realized it was a human hand, dried and blackened, nailed to the trunk with an old iron spike. Below it, scratched into the bark, were the words, "Turn back." I remember Tom shouting, "We're leaving!" Now, but there was nowhere to go. Because every direction, north, south, east, west, led us right back to that same tree. Every single time. It was like the mountain was folding around us. Night came fast, too fast. The air grew colder than I thought possible. We built a fire, though none of us wanted to close our eyes. Lena wouldn't speak. She just stared into the flames, clutching her broken camera. Tom sat beside her, muttering to himself. Eric was trying to read the map again when he froze. He pointed at the edge of the firelight. Someone was standing there, a small figure, barefoot, skin pale as snow, watching us. We all saw it. And then it moved, not walked, not ran, but slid, like its feet never touched the ground. Tom threw a rock. The thing vanished into the dark. We packed up immediately and started moving, even though it was night. The only light we had came from our flashlights. But as we walked, one by one, they started to fail. First Tom's, then Lena's, then mine flickered. That's when I realized Eric wasn't behind me anymore. We called his name. Nothing. We searched for hours. No footprints, no sound, just silence. By the second night, Lena was hysterical. She said she could hear Eric calling her from the forest, saying, "This way." Tom held her, telling her it wasn't real. But then I heard it too. "Come back. This way." The voice was Eric's, exactly like his. But it was coming from all directions. Tom decided we needed to climb higher to get a signal. So we followed a narrow ridge toward a peak that looked familiar. That's when the fog rolled in, thick, white, and freezing. Within minutes, we couldn't see 2 meters ahead. Lena grabbed my arm and whispered, "Something's moving out there." Shapes started forming in the fog, tall, human-like figures walking slowly, hundreds of them, all silent. We ran, slipping on rocks, gasping for air, until Tom lost his footing. I reached for him, but his body just disappeared into the mist below. No sound of impact, just gone. It was just me and Lena now. We stumbled downward until we found a narrow ravine that led into the forest. Somehow, the fog didn't follow us there. We collapsed under a tree, shivering, exhausted. Lena leaned against me, whispering, "We're not supposed to be here." Before I could answer, she went still. Her eyes rolled up, and her mouth opened like she was choking, but no sound came out. Then I saw it, her breath forming shapes in the cold air. Not smoke, not mist. Faces. Dozens of faces screaming silently around her. She convulsed once, twice, and then she stopped breathing. I screamed for help, shook her, slapped her. Nothing. I tried CPR, but her lips were cold and stiff within seconds. And then, from behind me, I heard that breath again. Slow. Wet. It whispered my name. David. I didn't look back. I ran. I don't remember how long I ran. When I finally saw sunlight, I dropped to my knees and cried. A group of local rescue workers found me the next day near a logging road, barefoot and half-conscious. They said I was lucky to be alive. Frostbite on my feet. Mild hypothermia. Dehydration. When I told them about my friends, they searched for weeks. They found nothing. No tents, no footprints, no bodies. Just a rusted metal tag in the dirt near where they picked me up. It had a single word engraved. Revenate. Romanian for returned. It's been 3 years. I've had therapy. I've moved to another country. But the nightmares never stopped. Sometimes I wake up and smell rust. Sometimes I hear that dragging sound in my hallway. And once, just once, I found bare footprints outside my apartment door, leading away into the night. They were small, like a child's. Last week, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. It was taken from behind me, in the forest, the day we entered the cave. In the corner of the picture, between the trees, you can see something. A small, pale face, watching us, smiling. Authorities never reopened the case. Locals say the mountain has its own rules, that sometimes it keeps what it wants, but sometimes it returns them. Last night, I heard a knock on my door at 3:17 a.m. 3 slow knocks. When I looked through the peephole, I saw a shadow standing there, short, still, barefoot. And a whisper came through the wood. "You shouldn't have come back." I've been hiking for as long as I can remember. The mountains have always felt like home to me. Silent, ancient, and honest. But after what happened last winter in the Rockies, I can't even look at a mountain without feeling a chill crawl up my spine. It started as a solo trip. I wanted to clear my head after my brother's death. He'd fallen during a climb the year before. An accident, they said. But deep down, I never believed it. He was too careful, too experienced. Something about the way his body was found didn't add up. I chose to hike near the same ridge where it happened. I don't know if it was guilt or a need for closure, but I told myself I had to see it for myself, to face the place that took him. The first day was calm. The snow crunched under my boots, and the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. The forest was quiet, except for the occasional crow cawing from somewhere high above. By the second evening, I set up camp near a frozen lake. The stars were endless, the kind of beauty that makes you forget how dangerous nature can be. I remember sitting by the fire, listening to the wood crackle, when I heard it. A faint voice carried by the wind. At first I thought it was just the wind whistling through the peaks, but then I heard it again. A whisper. It said my name. "Eli, I froze. My flashlight was off and the darkness around me felt thick, almost alive. I called out, "Who's there?" Nothing. Only the wind. After a few minutes, I convinced myself I was imagining things. The mind plays tricks in isolation. I crawled into my tent, zipped it shut, and tried to sleep. But the whispers didn't stop. They came and went all night. Faint, distant, always saying my name. By morning, I was exhausted. My breath fogged the air as I boiled coffee and tried to shake off the unease. That's when I saw the footprints. They circled my tent. Bare footprints. Human. But they weren't mine. They were smaller. Lighter. Leading away from the camp and into the tree line. I followed them. The snow grew deeper as I walked. The forest was dense and silent. The kind of silence that presses on your ears. After maybe 10 minutes, the prints stopped suddenly. As if the person had just vanished. No struggle, no trail, nothing. I stood there, staring at the last footprint, when I heard it again. "Eli!" The voice came from behind me. I spun around, nothing, just trees. That's when I noticed something strange. The forest around me looked different. The trees were taller, darker, and the air felt heavier. Like I had stepped into a different place entirely. I started back toward camp, but the trail was gone. My footprints had disappeared under a thin layer of fresh snow. I should have panicked, but something inside me felt calm, numb even. I kept walking, convinced I'd find my tent soon. Instead, I found a cave. It wasn't big, just a narrow opening in the side of a rocky hill. I don't know why, but I felt drawn to it, like something was pulling me inside. The moment I stepped in, the air turned warm, too warm for winter. My flashlight flickered, and for a second, I thought I saw movement deeper inside, a shadow that shifted when I blinked. Then I saw it, an old climbing rope, frayed. Frozen into the rock, the same kind my brother used. I reached out to touch it and heard his voice, clear as day. "Eli, you shouldn't have come." I froze. My hand shook as I pointed my flashlight deeper into the cave. The beam hit something, a figure standing just beyond the light. It looked like him, my brother. Same jacket, same boots, but his eyes, they were wrong. Completely black. I stumbled backward, dropping the light. Darkness swallowed me. It moved closer. I could hear the crunch of gravel under its boots, slow and deliberate. "Eli," it whispered again. "You need to stay. You can't leave now." I don't remember running, but I must have. The next thing I knew, I was outside again, gasping for air. The snow had stopped, and the forest was eerily still. When I finally found my camp, everything was gone. My tent, my gear, even the ashes of my fire, all missing, like I'd never been there. I wandered for hours until I saw the search team. They said I'd been missing for 3 days. 3 days. But to me, it felt like only one night. When I got back to town, I told the ranger what happened. He just stared at me and said, "You're not the first." Every year, someone hears the whispers. He told me about local legends, how the mountain calls to those who've lost someone there, how it mimics voices, showing you what you most want to see. And if you answer, you never come back. Sometimes I wonder if I ever truly left, because even now, in my apartment miles away, I still hear him. When the wind hits the windows just right, I hear my brother's voice. Soft, pleading. "Eli, come back to the mountains." And every time I do, I feel that same pull, that same warmth, that same whisper, waiting in the dark. I've climbed mountains my whole life. But there's one I'll never climb again. And the worst part? It wasn't even supposed to be there. It happened 2 years ago in northern Montana. I'd taken a seasonal ranger job at Glacier National Park. Easy money, quiet life, time alone to think. I'd just gone through a messy breakup and needed to get out of the city. Solitude felt like a cure. There was an older ranger there named Bill, a local guy who'd worked those mountains for decades. He was the one who first told me about it, the extra peak. "There's a summit north of Black Bear Ridge," he said one night over a campfire. "Shows up some seasons, disappears others. Not on any map. Locals call it the Lost Peak." I laughed. "A mountain that comes and goes? You mean fog?" But Bill didn't laugh back. He just poked at the fire and said, "Fog doesn't change your compass readings." 2 weeks later, I started noticing strange things during patrols. My GPS would glitch out every time I neared a certain valley. The compass spun like crazy. I figured it was magnetic interference, normal for mountain terrain. One afternoon, I spotted it for the first time. A mountain I'd never seen before, tall, narrow, capped with ice that shimmered in the sunlight like glass. It stood directly beyond a ridge I'd crossed dozens of times. But this time, there it was. I radioed Bill, half joking. "Hey, I think I found your missing peak." There was a long silence before his reply. "Turn around, kid." "Don't go near it," I didn't listen. Curiosity has always been my curse. The next morning, I packed light, just my climbing gear, food, and a small camera, and started toward the peak. The forest felt wrong from the start. Too quiet. No birds, no wind, not even the crunch of twigs underfoot. Every sound seemed swallowed, like the air itself was muffled. After an hour of hiking, I reached a clearing. The ground was covered with frost, even though it was midsummer. I exhaled and watched my breath turn white. Then I heard something faint, like a hum, low and constant, coming from the direction of the peak. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded alive. I told myself it was just wind echoing through the canyons and kept walking. The closer I got, the heavier the air became. My skin tingled, like static crawling beneath it. And that's when I realized I hadn't seen the sun for hours. A gray haze hung overhead, thick and unmoving. Halfway up the slope, I saw a shape among the rocks. A small wooden cabin, ancient-looking, half-collapsed under snow and time. Smoke was curling faintly from its chimney. I froze. No one lived this deep into the restricted zone. I knocked on the door. No answer. Inside it was dark, cold, and empty. Dust coated everything. But someone had been there recently. A mug sat on the table, steaming faintly. The smell of pine tea filled the air. Then I noticed the walls. Every inch of them was carved with symbols, circles, spirals, and crude mountain shapes. In the center of one wall, someone had scratched a message in English. "The peak calls you by name." That's when I heard my name. Soft, like it was being whispered through the floorboards. "Eli." I backed out of the cabin, heart racing. The whisper followed me, behind my ear, then in front, then inside my head. I ran until the cabin disappeared from sight. The slope grew steeper, the air colder. My boots crunched on frozen soil. The hum I'd heard earlier was louder now, a deep vibration that I could feel in my chest. I reached a narrow ledge and looked back. The forest was gone, completely gone. Where it should have been, there was only fog, gray, endless, shifting like water. I turned back toward the summit. That's when I saw the path wasn't natural. The rocks formed perfect steps, cut into the mountain like an ancient staircase. each one lined with faint carvings, similar to those from the cabin. I climbed, one cautious step at a time. When I reached the top, I stopped breathing. The summit wasn't snow or stone. It was black glass, perfectly smooth, reflecting the gray sky above. At the center of it, there was a hole, circular, about 6 feet wide. I shone my flashlight down, but the beam didn't reach the bottom, just blackness. Then the whisper came again, echoing from inside the hole. "Eli, jump." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. This was insane. I'd climbed too high, maybe altitude sickness. I turned to leave, but the path behind me was gone. The staircase had vanished, replaced by jagged rock, and the fog was climbing the slope, rising like a living thing. The hum was deafening now, vibrating through the air. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound wasn't outside. It was inside my skull. That's when I saw them, shapes in the fog, dozens of them, moving slowly toward me. They looked human at first, silhouettes of hikers, climbers, but their faces were wrong, blank, no eyes, no mouths, just smooth, pale skin. Their heads tilted slightly, as if listening. One of them stepped closer and reached out a hand. Its fingers were long, almost too long. "Eli," it whispered. I backed away, slipped, and fell, half sliding, half tumbling down the rocks. My flashlight shattered. Pain exploded in my shoulder. When I looked up again, the figures were gone. The fog receded. The mountain was silent. I don't remember much of how I got back. I just remember stumbling through trees again, real ones this time. The forest returned as if it had been painted back into place. By the time I reached the ranger station, night had fallen. Bill was waiting on the porch, smoking. He looked at me once and said, "You went up there, didn't you?" I nodded weakly. He sighed and muttered, "Then it's already started." Later that night, I tried to sleep, but the humming wouldn't stop. It was faint now, like an echo you can't unhear. I decided to check the camera footage from my climb. The first few clips were normal. Trees, frost, the cabin. Then the footage cut out, just static. When it came back, the angle was wrong. The camera was lying on the ground, pointing at the summit. I could see my own boots walking to the edge of the black pit. But here's the thing. I don't remember ever going near it. Then my voice on the recording said, "It's beautiful." After that, the camera shook violently and went black. I turned the tape over to park authorities. They never released a statement. The official report said I suffered from temporary disorientation and exposure. Bill left the job a week later. No one heard from him again. I stayed another month before quitting. I couldn't take it. The constant sense that something was watching from just beyond the tree line. Every night, I heard faint knocking on the cabin wall. Always 3 knocks. Always right before dawn. Before I left, I took one last look at the northern ridge. The lost peak was gone again. Just clouds and sky where it had stood. I almost convinced myself it was all in my head. Until last week. I was scrolling through a mountaineering forum when I saw a post titled, "New Summit Discovered in Glacier National Park." The photo showed a tall, narrow peak, just like before. Same black reflection at the top. Same shape. The person who posted it was a young hiker named Daniel Pierce. He wrote, "Going to check it out tomorrow." Wish me luck. That was 10 days ago. No one's heard from him since. It's been 2 years, and I still hear it sometimes. Especially when the wind passes through the trees outside my apartment. That same hum. That same whisper. Eli. I wake up drenched in sweat, staring out the window. and for a split second I swear I can see it. The outline of sort of impossible mountain, shimmering faintly against the night sky. I moved to another state. I changed jobs. But no matter where I go, my compass never points north anymore. It always spins, and sometimes when it stops, it points straight at me. I used to think the mountains were peaceful, silent, beautiful, eternal. Now, I know better. The silence isn't peace, it's warning. 3 years ago, I took a seasonal job as a surveyor for a small environmental firm in Colorado. It was the kind of work I loved. Remote, quiet. Long days spent hiking through untouched wilderness. My team was small. Just me, my friend Mark, and a guy named Jensen, our supervisor. We were mapping erosion patterns around an old trail deep in the San Juan Mountains, a place locals called Hollow Ridge. It wasn't on most maps anymore. The Park Service had shut the trail down years earlier because of unstable terrain. But our company had been hired to resurvey the area after a landslide. From day one, something felt off. No birds, no wind, no sound. Even the air felt heavier there, like we were underwater. We hiked for 3 hours before setting up camp near the ridge. Mark cracked a joke about mountain ghosts, and Jensen told him to shut up. I laughed it off, but that night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside the tent. Slow, steady crunching in the frost. I thought it was Mark, maybe heading out to pee. But then I heard another set of steps, and another. It sounded like a small group of people moving in a circle around our campsite. I reached for my flashlight, unzipped the tent, and looked out. Nothing. Just trees and snow, glowing faintly under the moonlight. The sound stopped the moment I stepped out. I checked the ground the next morning. No footprints. Not even ours from the night before. On the third day, Jensen went to map the upper ridge, while Mark and I stayed near the base. By late afternoon, we hadn't heard from him over the radio. Mark tried calling several times. Static. Finally, around dusk, we decided to go find him. We hiked the same path he'd taken, but the trail just ended. It didn't fade or curve. It ended. The dirt path we'd been walking on stopped abruptly at a wall of rock and pine, like it had never existed beyond that point. Mark frowned. This doesn't make sense. We walked this section yesterday. I nodded. I remembered the fallen tree, the bend, the slope. All gone. And then, from behind us, Jensen's voice crackled through the radio. "Don't come up here." Then silence. We shouted his name, but there was no reply. The signal died completely after that. We decided to head back before dark, but the woods seemed different. The trees denser, the light dimmer, the air colder. At one point, I looked down at my compass. The needle spun in circles. Mark said, half joking, "Maybe we're the ones lost, not him." Then we saw it. A cabin hidden between the trees. Small, crooked, and old, like it hadn't been touched in decades. Smoke rose faintly from its chimney. We should have turned back right then. But Mark shouted Jensen's name and ran to the door. When we stepped inside, it was warm. Too warm. Like someone had just been there. A lantern burned on a small wooden table. Next to it lay a folded map. The map showed our route, our camp, everything, except the ridge. In its place, someone had written a single word in dark ink. "Gone," Mark whispered. "What the hell is this?" And then we heard movement upstairs. We froze. The floorboards creaked above us, slow, dragging steps. I shined my flashlight up the staircase, calling out, "Jensen?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, quiet and wrong, whispered, "Leave." Mark bolted out the door. I followed, heart pounding. We ran until the cabin was out of sight. When we finally stopped, both of us were shaking. Mark said, "That wasn't Jensen." He was right. The voice sounded close, but empty, like it came from inside my head. We made it back to camp just before nightfall. Our tents were torn open, not ripped, cut. Clean slices through the fabric, like with a knife. All our equipment was scattered, but nothing was taken. Mark whispered, "Someone doesn't want us here." We built a small fire, trying to calm down. I kept the radio close, but it was just static. Around midnight, I started hearing whispers in the wind again. Faint, fragmented words. I couldn't make them out, but Mark looked at me and said, "You hear that too, right?" We didn't sleep at all. At dawn, we packed up and headed downhill. The trail looked unfamiliar. It curved in ways it hadn't before, splitting and twisting through fog. After a while, I realized something terrifying. The mountain was bigger. Landmarks were gone, replaced by slopes and ridges I didn't remember. It was like the entire terrain had shifted overnight. We walked for hours and saw nothing. No roads, no signs, not even our own tracks. Around noon, we found Jensen's backpack, half buried in snow. His radio was still inside, but the casing was cracked open. The metal edges looked melted. We didn't say a word after that. We just kept walking. By sunset, we stumbled into a clearing. My heart sank. It was our campsite, the same one we'd left that morning. The tents were still torn, the fire pit still warm. We'd been walking in circles. Mark shouted in frustration, kicking snow. "This can't be happening." And then we heard it, faint but unmistakable. Jensen's voice. "Down here." We turned. The voice came from the trees. We ran toward it, shouting his name. But the forest didn't open. It closed around us. Darker, denser, endless. When we stopped to catch our breath, we realized we were standing in front of the same cabin again. Only this time, there was no smoke, no light. The door was wide open. We went inside. The map on the table was gone. The air was ice cold now. Frost covered the windows. I pointed my flashlight at the far wall and froze. There were photographs pinned across it, dozens of them. Each one showed different hikers, surveyors, campers, and in the background of every photo, that same cabin. Always the same. I found one picture that made my blood run cold. It was us. Me, Mark, and Jensen, setting up camp, except the photo was old, faded. The trees behind us looked different, smaller, younger. Mark whispered, How can this be?" That's when we heard footsteps on the porch. They were slow, deliberate. Someone, or something, was moving toward the door. Mark grabbed a metal rod from the fireplace. I turned off my flashlight and pressed against the wall. The footsteps stopped just outside. Then, the door began to close. Slowly, silently, until it clicked shut on its own. We waited. 5 seconds. 10. 20. Nothing. Then, a whisper came from right behind me. "You shouldn't have come back." I spun around. Empty air. Mark dropped the metal rod. "We have to get out." We ran. We didn't stop running until the sky turned gray with dawn. The forest thinned, and we finally saw power lines in the distance. Civilization. When we reached the ranger station, a search team was waiting. They'd been looking for us for 5 days. 5 days. We tried to explain, but they said no one named Jensen had ever worked with our company. When we showed them the photographs from the cabin, the prints were blank, pure white paper. Mark quit the job the next day. I tried to move on, but something never left me. 2 months later, Mark disappeared during a solo trip to the same area. They never found his body. I promised myself I'd never go back there, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear the radio static in my apartment. Every once in a while, a voice breaks through. Faint, familiar. Down here, I threw the radio away. But now, I sometimes see condensation on my window, spelling a single word. Gone. And when I dream, I'm always standing at the edge of that ridge again, staring down a trail that wasn't there the day before. A trail that leads to a cabin that no one built. A place that doesn't stay gone for long. Thanks for watching till the end. You're braver than most. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Tell me in the comments which story scared you the most. And remember, sometimes the scariest things are real.